What's the position group with the most concern at Nebraska so far through spring ball? Find out.
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to the show. It is Tuesday, and today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. And, of course, we appreciate you guys making Locked On Nebraska your first listen every day. We're here for you every day, free and available wherever you get your podcasts, and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Mitch, good morning.
Good morning, Connor. How are you today?
Very, very good. Very good. Let's we talked quarterbacks yesterday. We talked about positivity with the offense. Where are we moving today? Maybe are we going the other way?
Right. I think there's some concerns at the running back spot. Nebraska has not had a running back emerge this spring until maybe Saturday in the scrimmage, the second scrimmage. We heard Matt Rule talk about Emmett Johnson as someone who has picked things up well and I think picked up where he left off last spring when he was Nebraska's primary running back in the month of November. But that was because of injuries to Gabe Ervin and Ramir Johnson and Anthony Grant. Now you have Ervin and Johnson back, but Gabe Ervin is limited. He had that hip injury, which really makes you wonder what it's going to be like for him coming back for another season. Hips are tough to come back from, but they're hopeful with him. Ramir Johnson has been limited this spring. Dante Dowdell, the transfer from Oregon, is transitioning into the Nebraska offense. Quentin Ives has been dinged up this spring and has no experience at the collegiate level. They're talking about Maurice Mazuka, a smaller back, a walk-on, the older brother of Micah Mazuka, Nebraska's transfer offensive guard, as someone who's made an impact at the running back position this spring. But, really it's kind of Emmett Johnson as the guy again. And I'd say there's some concern around Husker Nation about the state of the running back position and what they're going to find when they go out to play games at the end of August.
Yeah, this is, it's, I don't know if it's alarming, but it's kind of the way that they handle it, right? Just the position in general. I think they like to have, Rules talked about it before. They like to have, probably three different guys who they're going to split carries with. Maybe, if you look at an individual game, a guy with, 15 to 18 carries, and then a guy with 10 to 12, and then maybe another to give you a few and maybe catch a few out of the backfield. And I think Emmett Johnson, from the way that they talk about him, they feel like he slots in nicely to the 10 to 12 guy role. But it leaves a pretty, big gap for the guys that are going to surround him. And what you don't want is a guy playing out of position, just in terms of, hey, is he a role type of player, and does he have to be a feature guy on this team? And then does that make everybody, does that make him worse in the long term as well? So I don't know. They don't seem to be really sounding the alarm bells on it. Although, when Rule talked about the offense, especially from the scrimmage from over the weekend, a lot of positivity with the wide receivers and the quarterbacks and the tight ends and the offensive line. And then he got a question about the running back, and it was kind of, yeah, we're still sifting through some things. We're still figuring some things out. So I wonder if that's a spot where they're a little bit more active in the portal over the summer. And I don't know what it does for them if they add another body to that room, but I do think they need some dependability and to get some carries at that spot, because it feels like it's the one spot on offense where it could take you to the next level if you get a game breaker at that spot. Don't know if there's a game breaker out there. Hard to get at this point. But if you get it, it can really take your offense to the next level.
Yeah, I don't expect that there are going to be departures at this position in the week that's left with the transfer portal to be open, but you never know. It's always a possibility. And if someone's going to leave Nebraska, it's going to happen most likely after Saturday. I mean, maybe leading up to the spring game when there's one practice. More than likely, there's a in the couple days after spring ball is over. There's that small window where players can go in the portal, and someone's going to go in from Nebraska, probably a handful of players. And I wouldn't expect it's going to happen at the running back spot, but if it does, that's when you have to then flip it and go look to find someone. And there are some
Yeah.
running. It's not right now like a portal that's just full of high-end players. I expected right now that nationally people would be talking about the transfer portal having more big names in it than it does. And we'll see over the next week if some players go in who have accomplishments that are beyond, being backups or being role players. There's a lot of those guys now. There's a running back from Oregon State who's in there, who's a good player, but not someone who's mentioned Nebraska as a possibility. Emmett Johnson, I think it's worth mentioning, was somebody who was shopping himself a bit, or so it seemed, on social media in the winter period. He was putting his highlight reel, huddle film, that kind of thing out there. And you don't generally do that if you're not having some thoughts. Now, I think everybody has thoughts nowadays. That's just the way it is in college football. He maybe took it a step further, and then of course, here he is. He's doing well in the spring. We may hear from Emmett Johnson here on Tuesday. EJ Barthel, the running backs coach, is going to visit with the media. Marcus Satterfield gets another shot at the podium. I expect that we'll get a couple of running backs too, and maybe one would be Emmett Johnson, probably Ramir Johnson. So interested to hear what Emmett's thoughts are just on how the last few months have gone, coming out of a season where he was the number one back at the end of the year, but really just kind of by default because the three in front of him were hurt.
Yeah, the other thing to keep in mind, I guess, with the spot is you mentioned it a little bit at the top. Maybe this is just a case where the concern right now is the lack of what you have at your fingertips on a day-to-day basis. Gabe Ervin and Ramir Johnson. I think Ramir Johnson's he's on the 6-year, senior, plan with his injury history, obviously, as well. So maybe this is just a spring thing and they're kind of trying to manage reps as much as they can. But it's not like either of those guys, Gabe Ervin or Ramir Johnson, have shown their abilities to be, 1,000-yard guys, 1,200-yard guys at any points in their career either. They've all kind of been good for periods of time. I thought it was interesting that Rule talked about Ramir Johnson, and he said, this is a couple of weeks ago now, he said, well, when we think about Ramir, I like to remind our coaches of the Michigan game in 2021. That was a long time ago, and he was obviously really, really good in that game, but it feels like a spot that's going to be pieced together. Like I said, I don't know if they mind that much, but it'll be interesting to see who gets the most important carries of games, and maybe we don't know the answer to that until we get midway or later into August.
What they want above all else, well, of course, is a productive runner, but they need players at that position who can help in pass pro, who can do their job in pass pro. And if they don't understand the concepts that Satterfield is looking for from that position in pass protection, then that player's not going to get reps. That's, in games. That's just how it is. And I think that was the concern last year with Quentin Ives, the true freshman who was redshirting. When all of the injuries hit and Emmett Johnson went from 4th on the depth chart to 1st on the depth chart, they talked about taking Quentin Ives and not just getting him 4 games, but getting him the rest of the season where he was somebody that was going to have to contribute. And it didn't materialize in that way, in large part because they didn't feel comfortable with him out there in pass protection. And obviously you can't have a running back who just totes the ball and isn't there when you're going to throw it, because it's just a dead giveaway to the defense of what's going on. So I think if he can get that part down, then maybe his position in this group can be elevated quite a bit, because they like what he gives them as a runner. So we'll see. And that's part of what they like in Mazuka too. Maurice Mazuka, is that he's picked up the pass pro concepts and is somebody they can trust to go out there and help prevent their quarterback from getting hurt. So something to watch for sure as Nebraska heads out into the rest of the offseason. We're going to talk after the break about something else that's new on the Nebraska offense this spring. In addition to looking for a workhorse at running back, they've been testing out this new technology that allows the coaches to talk to their quarterbacks while they're on the field. Really intriguing to hear Matt Rule talk about it on Saturday. That's after the break. For now, please follow us on Twitter at LockedOnNEB. Continue to watch us on YouTube. Subscribe on all of the podcast listening platforms. Support our sponsors. We'll be back after the break. All right, as I mentioned, please support our sponsors. I want to tell you about Game Time as I continue to plan that big trip to go see the Royals in Kansas City in May. Couple losses here recently for the Royals, but hopeful that they're gonna keep their hot ways going for a few more weeks at least, well, until October. But I got my trip ready to go. I think it's against the A's on a Sunday in the middle of May. Will be my first visit to the K this year, and it's going to be a better experience because of Game Time. Game Time's an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball. It makes getting tickets easier and faster. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down as it gets closer to the first pitch. You've got all-in pricing, no fees at checkouts, deals for specific zones in the stadium, flexible customer service. It's all there. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with the Game Time app. Create an account and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEG for $20 off. Check it out at gametime.co and download the app today on the App Store and Google Play. Game Time, lowest price guaranteed.
Also, Connor and Mitch here for the FanDuel Sportsbook. It is playoff time, the NBA and the NHL. If you're watching the NBA last night, a couple incredible games back to back, including my Nuggets winning on a buzzer beater by Jamal Murray. Baseball's in full swing, as Mitch mentioned with the Royals. You could bet on Bobby Witt Jr. to get a hit. It seems like a pretty easy bet. And right now, we want to help you out with the FanDuel Sportsbook. New customers get $150 in bonus bets. That's guaranteed. $150, win or lose. Bet on everything that I just mentioned. But like Bobby Witt Jr. to get one hit, to get two hits, to get three hits, to get four hits, to hit a home run, like nightly stuff. You can all check it out on the FanDuel Sportsbook, and then plenty of meat left on the bone for the NBA and the NHL playoffs. All in an app that's safe, secure, and easy to use. So what are you waiting for? Head to FanDuel.com/LockedOn and make your first bet an automatic win. That is with our friends from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, back here on a Tuesday. Matt Rule talked about some of the changes that are coming to college football. Not quite as big picture as conference realignment or anything like that, but it does affect everybody. In helmet communication, in partly, I think, a response to what we had going on with Michigan last year, seemed like a slam dunk, and it is indeed ratified by all the various committees that need to ratify it by the NCAA. So that'll be in play this year, and it's something that's been going on in the NFL. It's something that's even been going on a little bit in high school. I wanted to play this clip. So we had Matt Rule on video yesterday, so we're trying this new stuff out with technology. So bear with us. Here's Matt Rule talking a little bit about what changes for them in terms of how they signal plays in, or the in-helmet communication piece in general.
Are you done doing signals on the sidelines? So there won't be any more of that going on during games.
I'm not saying anything out loud of what we're doing. I think you'll see most teams continue to signal. You have to signal on defense. See, like, I've talked to some coaches around the country, and because there's in the NFL, no, you only have 48 guys active on game day, right? So You can't really. It's hard to go chip. Went no huddle, but not many people are going to go fast no huddle the whole game. So you can have one headset, right? And that guy signals the defense to everybody, and you're in the huddle most of the game. And then when it goes 2 minute, they signal from the sidelines most times. Well, what I think you're going to see people do in college now is go even faster because they know the defense has to signal, right? So one guy can't get the play call and tell it to 10 other guys while they're going in 12 seconds. It's impossible. So in the bowl games, when they experimented with it, a lot of teams had they let everyone have a headset, or a lot of teams had 3. So one secondary guy, one linebacker, one D lineman. That didn't pass, and I'm not complaining about it. It's one guy's got it, but we would only really use that. So we'll still signal on defense. We'll have to. And then on offense, I think you'll see a lot of people going even faster. So they'll probably still signal from the sideline. What we do, we'll probably do a little mixture of both.
There you go. There's Matt Rule. What do you think of that, Mitch? I mean, he answered a few questions about it and talked about it in some different ways as well. That was just a little bit of a sampling of it. But those are the initial thoughts from Rule on the helmet communication, of which it seems he has a lot.
We're not telling nobody nothing about what we're doing. I like that. Every coach has got a little bit of paranoia in him, and Matt Rule doesn't have much of it in comparison to his peers. But there you go. They're going to use all the secrecy that they get at their disposal to hold things back until they play UTEP, and then they can just show everybody on TV, so the rest of their opponents will see it.
He also launched into this thing. He told a story about how it was kind of common knowledge in the NFL that Sean McVay, I mean, they would just stay up on the line. The Rams would just stay up on the line, and they wouldn't even bother with kind of moving around, just so they can get a look at what the defense was doing to them or how they were lining up before the play clock hit 15. And Sean McVay, because he's a offensive genius, could walk his quarterback through the looks as before they got to 15 and the mic cut off. And so it could basically just be another set of eyes. Hey, what do you see? Here's what I see. And then, literally take them all the way up to here's read 1, here's read 2. This guy's going to do this. This guy's going to do this. Now you only get till 15 to do it on the clock, but it's another set of eyes that go all the way until, I mean, that could be really beneficial, especially for a freshman quarterback to apply it to Nebraska's situation.
Yeah, that gets to be a lot of information, and you would like your quarterback to start to be able to diagnose a defense without a coach talking into his ear about what who might be blitzing or whether they're in zone or man. That starts to take, I think, some of the intention out of what the in-helmet communication is for. But if they're doing it in the NFL, then they're going to try to find a way to do it in college. And there's always unintended consequences, no matter if it's NIL or if it's helmet headsets. So it'll be a feeling out process. I think a couple of things. One, as you mentioned, thank you, Jim Harbaugh, because he allowed this to happen. I think eventually this was coming to college football, but it's been proposed in the past and shut down because for whatever reason, because teams like to mess with each other, because they like to be able to steal signals, because they didn't want to spend the money, which is ridiculous in this day. But Michigan's situation with the sign stealing and Connor Stallions and all of that in 2023, that it made it an inevitability that it was going to happen this offseason. So you don't have to signal in offensive plays with the cards if you don't want. And Michigan's not going to be, we hope, tapping into the radio headsets that are being transmitted from sideline to the huddle. When it comes to Nebraska, freshman quarterback, yeah, that's likely what Nebraska's looking at in 2024. So huge advantage for a freshman quarterback to be able to talk to his coach up until there's 15 seconds on the play clock when he's coming out of the huddle. Also, this Nebraska staff has done it before. Glenn Thomas, the quarterback's coach, just came from the Pittsburgh Steelers, so he's used to it. Matt Rule, head coach for 2+ seasons of the Carolina Panthers. Marcus Satterfield has been there. They know how to do this and what works and what doesn't work. So they may be a step ahead of some of the other college programs.
He actually said they did it a little bit in practice last year, just in case that they would last second kind of throw together something for him. So that goes to show you how, how prepared I think the staff is. But yeah,
They've
it's
been
not
doing it
foreign.
all spring too.
Yeah, it's not foreign to them in any way, shape, or form. So I think that helps in the application of it too. I don't know if that's an edge. Like I don't know if you could just be better at it than some other team, but maybe it gets in the way of other teams who are used to doing it one way. At the same time, they don't have to do it if they don't want to either. So I
You
don't
can
know
go
if
to
it's
the old way. You can stay with the old way
Right.
if you want.
like I don't know if it's an advantage for them, but it's nice to have it not be a hiccup during important practice time.
Nebraska, I believe Nebraska will find a way, especially with young quarterbacks, to make this work to their advantage. So they do it in the NFL. It works there. You don't see teams signaling in plays in the NFL when they have the option to go with in helmet. So I think eventually it'll be something that all college programs take to and find a way to make work. Maybe Nebraska's got a bit of a head start here in 2024. We'll find out. Speaking to the NFL, the Locked On NFL Mock Draft is now available. Check it out. It's a 6-episode series. You can hear who the local experts are picking for every NFL franchise. The draft, of course, is this week. The Locked On Mock Draft includes live reactions from local college football experts. It includes the fantasy football angle. Find the Locked On NFL Mock Draft now on the Locked On NFL Draft channel on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, it's Connor here for Monopoly Go. We've all been there as a player or fan. It's halftime. The scoreboard, it's not looking good. You're feeling low. You're not sure if your team could pull out a win. That's when you dig deep and you lift up your head and you say to yourself, it's time to get back in the game. And it's time to pull off some bank heists, as many as possible for my friends. That's right. I'm talking about Monopoly Go. It's the same Monopoly that you love, with community chest and chance and do not pass go, do not collect $200, all of those things, but it's on your phone anytime with new twists, including leaderboards to compare your progress to others. Play countless dynamic board, bankrupt your friends by smashing their landmarks with a wrecking ball, and charge rent, of course, for your iconic properties. So get back out there, put your game face on, and download Monopoly Go right now. It's free on the App Store and on Google Play.
So I want to take a quick spin to the east to close the show today and talk quickly about what's going on at Iowa. Not with Caitlin Clark. She's been all the talk in our neighboring state for the past few months, but she is gone on to the WNBA. So the focus is back on Kirk Ferentz's offense, which is like the diametrical opposite of what was going on with Caitlin Clark and Iowa women's basketball this winter. So Iowa, of course, is Nebraska's permanent, protected Big Ten rival through 2028. Nebraska fans, this is a new kind of setup, but there's only one team that the Huskers will play every year on its schedule. For as long as you can go back in Nebraska football, there have been multiple teams, and every year you're going here, then they're coming there, and so forth. But now it's just Iowa. There'll be 2-game series against other teams, but Iowa's every year, at least in this current 18-team structure that we have in the Big Ten. So until things expand or contract or whatever might happen, Nebraska fans should have real reason to be more focused on Iowa than really any opponent on the schedule. So Tim Lester is in as offensive coordinator in Iowa City. If you don't remember his hire from late January, he was an analyst with the Packers last season, and before that was the head coach at Western Michigan. This matters, of course, as I said, because of the changes in college football in the Big Ten. Iowa had the worst offense in the nation last year, and it still beat Nebraska and 9 other foes. So, Connor, what's your takeaway right away here at the end of spring for the Hawkeyes on what we might see from Iowa's offense moving forward?
Yeah, they had their spring game or their final spring practice over the weekend, and I've been reading and watching some of the coverage to come out of there. The problem that they have right now is, so Cade McNamara is back, which is a good thing for the fall, but he's not back right now. And so the offense that they're trying to run with Deacon Hill still, yes, the same guy from last year. The big guy at quarterback. People have commented that it's not necessarily working with Deacon so far, and they're basically in this mode where they're trying to kind of like they're playing an imaginary offense. They're trying to imagine how it worked. They're doing all of the stuff just outside of how the quarterback is working, which seems, I don't know if it's counterproductive, but it doesn't really seem like you're getting anything done. And so I don't think they're really going to have any idea of what's going to stick and what's going to connect until, Cade's supposed to be back in the middle of the summer at some point, and hopefully that's the case for them. But I don't think they're going to really have any idea until they strap up the pads and get midway through the camp and get Cade McNamara healthy and stuff like that. So believe it or not, it's I don't know if it's more intriguing than following the Brian Ferentz, like how many points are they going to score watch, which became like a national phenomenon last year.
That was probably better.
But this is it's really weird. It's a different dynamic, and they're not healthy right now, specifically at the most important positions. So I'll be following it really closely, as I always am with whatever Iowa's got going on.
Yeah, I caught up by checking out my coworker Scott Docterman, his reporting out of Iowa City for The Athletic, and you can also follow Locked On Hawkeyes, the podcast in Iowa, to stay up on the Hawks. But Docterman illuminated me to the knowledge that Lester brought a 600-page playbook to Iowa City. And they whittled it down this spring, I'm sure in part because, as you said, their quarterback's not out there. So this is the second knee situation, injury rehab for Cade McNamara, the former Michigan quarterback. He's a pocket guy, so doesn't need the kind of mobility that healthy knees would afford you. But I'm sure there's some concern in Iowa City about what they're going to get when McNamara does come back and he's healthy. A couple other things. Iowa's moving to an RPO system. That's what Lester's bringing in. So that's a run pass option. You wonder how that's going to work with McNamara. And as I mentioned, the history of knee problems.
You can imagine why it's not working with Deacon Hill, by the way.
Yeah. And then there's all kinds of issues at wide receiver, where of the 10 freshmen that Iowa recruited from 2018 to 2022, 8 transferred, 1 switched sports, and that's Brody Brecht, who we mentioned yesterday on the pod. He'll be pitching at Haymarket Park this week and is a potential first-round pick in the Major League Draft this summer. And then another, Jacob Bostic, just hit the portal last week. So they've got all kinds of issues similar to what we've seen at Nebraska in recent years at wide receiver and just retaining talent. That coupled with the quarterback stuff, it does make you wonder if this thing, it can't get worse, but if it's going to stay in a similar spot before Lester finds a way to get it on the upswing.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it could get worse. I mean, they could start turning the ball over, with and they, I think they were pretty, if I remember right, I checked on it relatively recently. They ended up being about -5, -7 in turnover margin last year, which is pretty, absurd for them, and especially for the output that they were putting together on offense and how they won the amount of games that they did. It's kind of like a statistical anomaly. But like, if it really goes haywire and all of a sudden they start, being loose with the football and fumbling all over the place, and it just doesn't click, then that is the nightmare scenario for Iowa. Like their defense in a lot of cases is enhanced. It's better by the fact that the offense is, bad, but it's not turning the football over. And they had one of the best punters in America over the last couple of years. They don't have him anymore either. That's a big part of this equation with Torrey Taylor gone now as well. So I don't know. There's just maybe a couple more question marks and things that you can't necessarily depend on for Iowa this year, where the last 3 years it was, pretty much lock, stock, and deliver. You know exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah, the departure of Taylor to the NFL is, and I was going to mention that too. That's a huge factor when you consider how Iowa was able to minimize the damage that its offense inflicted last year, because he'd go out and punt it 60 yards. And they went and found another guy from Australia to seemingly fill his place, but Taylor's probably a one of a kind talent. We'll see if Iowa can work that magic again.
Okay, Mitch, we are out of here on a Tuesday. Before we get you out, we'll remind you that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and it's now available on the Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today, and it is now available on the free Fire TV channels app.